If God exists, why is he so passive about suffering? This is certainly not an academic question. Everyone listening to this has either felt suffering or seen suffering, or most likely both. So if God exists, why is he so passive about the problems that cause us so much pain? If you look at the world around you, assuming that God made it, if you look at the world around you, God clearly cannot have been passive forever. Every day we feel the warmth of the sun, taste food of a great variety of flavors, and enjoy relationships with people who we love. If God doesn't exist, then you have to answer the question, where did all these good things come from? Where did we, the earth and the universe, come from if God was not the cause? Where did good come from if not from God? The first verses of the Bible describe that God was active at the beginning of creation, creating all of these things. All that God created being described as very good. When God made the world, he made it perfect. God was active at the beginning of history, and the rest of history describes the activities of man. And if you compare what God has created and what man has created, you will notice a stark contrast. God created sex so that married couples can enjoy each other and bring new life into the world. Man created pornography, prostitution, and abortion. God created humans, male and female, so that the strengths of each gender could be used to benefit the other. Man created abuse within male-female relationships and the continuous rivalry that exists between the two. God created foods of numerous different tastes, textures, and varieties for every human to enjoy. Man created food industries where the rich rob poor Eastern farmers, so that Western shareholders can make profits and their consumers can throw half of their food away. God created tongues to enable humans to sing and to laugh and to share in conversations. Man created Twitter so that people can use their tongues to do as much damage as they can without getting punched in the face. If we look at the world around us, we all have to admit that there is a strong connection between human suffering and human activity. The term the Bible used to describe such human activity is sin. It is sin that introduced the problem of suffering into this world, not God. And yet, we all know that that doesn't simply answer the problem of suffering entirely. We ask questions like, why does God still allow young children to get cancer? Why do the most poverty-stricken countries seem to be struck with the worst natural disasters? If God has the power to create every living thing, why does he not intervene and save people from death? The book that God has used to communicate himself to us, the Bible, well, it doesn't give us a clear or simple answer to these difficult questions. But one fact that is communicated very clearly is this. When God sent his Son, Jesus, into this world, Jesus agreed with us on this point. Suffering hurts. Suffering hurts. Suffering is a sign that something is wrong with the world. That's it. That's why Jesus spent so much of his time weeping with those who cried and bringing healing to those who were in pain. Though God may seem to be passive about suffering now, the evidence is that at one point in time, God's Son was very active in doing something about it. And yet, the remarkable thing about Jesus' life is that when he healed people, he told them to stay quiet. Yes, stay quiet. When Jesus healed people, he told them to stay quiet, for Jesus didn't want his fame to be about his instantaneous healings and miracles. Though these instant answers helped a few people, they don't help us. Instead, the story of Jesus centers around a cross on which God's own Son suffered, a cross that is at the center of God's message of hope. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure every person alive would like to replace the symbol of Christianity with the symbol of a magic wand. For when a wizard uses a magic wand, a miracle happens and a girl in rags is turned into a princess. Why doesn't God use his magic wand more often and simply zap away people's pain and cure every disease? Well, the reality is that most princesses wake up 24 hours after the ball dressed in rags again. And if Jesus only followed the same pattern of miracles and magic, everyone he ever cured would wake up to the same world of suffering the next day. The cripple might pick up his mat and walk when he was healed, but then he'd get knocked down by the bus the next day. A person might be cured of one disease, only to be diagnosed with another disease in a few months' time. We need more than miracles and magic and instant healings. We need a permanent cure. The reason the cross is the symbol of Christianity and not a magic wand is because it points us to the permanent cure that God provided. Firstly, the cross reminds us that God cares. You know, wizards stand 10 meters away to do their miracles. Jesus, however, came all the way from heaven to earth and placed himself in the most painful position in the world, the cross. The Bible describes it like this: being found in appearance as a man, Jesus humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. On the cross, Jesus suffered more than any other human being. The reason he did this is because God cares about the world, and God has sent his Son into the world to do something about it. To do something about the suffering that we experience every day. And secondly, Jesus didn't remain on the cross. For Jesus' death on a cross was followed by a resurrection. You know, whereas Cinderella wakes up 24 hours later dressed in rags again, Jesus came to life again 3 days after he had died. Jesus raising to life, reminding us that God is bigger than the problems of pain and suffering and death. Jesus has found a permanent cure. For all who believe in Jesus, God offers us hope in the face of suffering. Not hope in the form of instant healings or dramatic miracles. Though we may want miracles and instant healings to happen, just because in the main they don't happen all that often, doesn't mean that God is passive about suffering and doesn't care. The cross of Jesus reminds us that God does care and that God has actively done something about the problem of suffering. What matters now is, will you be passive about this offer of hope, or will you be active and do something about it? What do you need to do? Jesus put it like this. Jesus answered, "The work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent." To all who believe in Jesus, God offers the promise of life after death and a place free of all suffering. Our only job is to believe and to receive.